And now there's even a new study out today that talks about this unconscious bias training, showing how essentially it doesn't do anything but creates a worse of a problem, which is something that really needs to be talked about because no one really wants to touch that topic at all.
We have a story here from Real Clear Science. Research shows diversity training is ineffective. You don't say. To everybody listening, I just want you to imagine that you're at work. You know, maybe you work in an office, common job, you're at a computer, and they say it's time for your mandated corporate diversity training. What's the first thing every single person thinks, or 90% of them, when they're told this is what's going to happen?
A guy in a suit.
Well, no, just any person, any average person. Exactly.
I think
exactly
of the Office Space.
Eye roll.
Yeah.
The Office Space segment when they had their diversity training. Do you remember that clip?
No, it's been a while.
I don't want to spoil it. For
Yeah,
everyone,
nobody cares.
Yeah.
They're like, ugh.
Corporate drug.
If anything, I'd imagine it made it worse.
That's what the study found. It found that it did make race relations worse. I mean, already, let's be honest here. A lot of the woke people, they're very uncomfortable around people of color already. But imagine...
They admit it.
Yes. They're very patronizing a lot of times.
Man.
Yeah, they're patronizing a lot of the times. They're awkward. They're weird. And if you treat someone differently because of their skin color, obviously you're not going to gel or work with them as if you just treat them like a normal human being, which a lot of people are forgetting and they're not doing at all.
Well, Black Lives Matter drove a whole bunch of Hispanics over to the right too.
Yeah, that was crazy. So it was really interesting. We had, do you know Hunter Avallone?
Yeah.
What is that about? We had him on the show the other day, and
wild.
he's nice, but he's very like he said now he used to be conservative, now he's center left. He voted for Biden. I'm like, but he was talking about how he's very much in favor of the traditional family, and I'm like, so you oppose Black Lives Matter? And he's like, no. I'm like, yes or no? Black Lives Matter explicitly. In there, they're doing what is it? The New York Teachers Union did that curriculum.
Yeah.
The Black Lives Matter curriculum, where they oppose the traditional family. It's not just the parent organization. It's like the general group and what they espouse. They do not like traditional families. So to even go back to the discussion, it's very clearly a divide between what these countries are. New York, very, very different from say West Virginia, but he doesn't recognize that. And I think one of the big issues is that. You tell somebody racism is bad, and they're going to be like, I like that. That's correct. I don't like racism. Great. But then what they're really doing is, see, the woke left's definition of the word racism is is literally them being racist. Or I should say, they call it anti-racism, and it's the same exact thing as racism. The only real difference is what their stated intent is, I suppose. So they're advocating for one thing, calling it something else, and then having people do these trainings who clearly don't like it, and all it does is make everything worse, make everybody hate each other.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, if you're gonna tell someone that someone else is bad, you're doing a bad thing. So you're the bad one saying that guy's bad. So it's like if you're gonna use evil to call out evil, you're the evil one.
Well, basically, they're like, racism is bad. Our solution is to judge people on the basis of their race. It's like, okay.
Well, who was it? Ibrahim X. Kendi, who was talking about how the only way to make things right was just to be more biased against white people. This doesn't seem like the way forward.
He said discrimination against everybody.
Oh, everyone. Okay.
Yeah,
It's truly equal. I like that.
Well,
Sorry.
No, good.
In the schools, they've been pretty much teaching white kids to hate themselves.
Yes.
And that's the thing that really drives me over the edge. And thank God I homeschool, but they're teaching people not to credit Edison with light bulbs. Cartoon Network put out a thing about that, and like all these things that are just like little digs at white kids, and it's going to make white kids feel bad and hate themselves because of their skin.
But the Edison thing is interesting. So they're saying it was some black dude who invented the light bulb, I guess.
Oh yeah.
But it was actually that I think he perfected a filament that improved upon it, and I'm pretty sure, didn't he work for Edison?
I'm gonna look it up.
Not sure.
So my understanding of it was when it happened.
Glossed over while the cartoon played.
But it's not a Black Lives Matter thing. It's a socialism thing. It's a communism thing.
Yeah.
He invented it, but he was working for Edison. Edison said, "Here's what we're doing. Here's what we're building." And he went, "Oh, okay." And then he improved on the project. And they credit. It's about crediting the worker versus crediting the owner. You see?
Ah, yeah.
Yeah, his name's Lewis Howard Latimer, and he was an American inventor, patent draftsman for the patents of the incandescent light bulb, among other inventions. I could go deeper into it.
Yeah, but wasn't it
But
actually?
he didn't invent it. He just made like
a new filament.
The most used filament of the time.
Yeah. But my understanding is that isn't the original light bulb still on? It's always been on. It's in a firehouse in New York City or something like that.
Yes, and because of planned obsolescence, we're now given light bulbs that we have to keep buying again and again.
Yes, that's I guess like the typical thing you hear on the internet. I think the official answer was that it was completely impractical to build because it was expensive and hard to produce. But I also think you got a guy who makes a light bulb and says these things basically light up forever, and they're like, so what? We run a company for a year and then we're done. Good point. Can we get something that fails? And now here's the best part. That's the guy who invented the filament that we used for like 100 years. Was he the one who perfected the obsolescence? So they're trying to credit him for making the light bulb when in fact he may be the guy who's credited for creating the bad light bulbs that caused rampant pollution and consumerism and basically emboldened capitalism. I'm not saying that's true. I'm just saying, if I heard the story, there's a firehouse in New York, I guess, they have a light bulb. It's been on forever. It's still on.
Yeah, I heard about that as well.
Yeah, I don't know if that's true. I don't know, whatever.
I've been thinking a lot about secession since that came up a little bit earlier. And I think that maybe a better thing would be a revolution against taxes that are imposed unjustly.
That's not going to solve the culture war argument.
Like sales, like
what does that have to
payroll
do?
tax.
But what does that have to do with like kids getting puberty blockers?
Well, I know I'm just kind of jumping track right here and taking it back to where it was like 20 minutes ago. It has nothing to do with that.
Those are the issues for the culture war.
Two-state solution.
Listen.
Kids are crazy because we've been at war because we want to extract opium and oil for money. So if we can get out of this fiat realm of the OPEC dollar and stop worshiping the dollar, then I think kids won't be so crazy because we won't have to go to war.
The one thing that may drive an actual divorce is the fact that the populist left and the populist right don't care for any of that stuff, and it's only the neo-libs and neocons who are like, yay, war. So you give the Bernie Sanders crew the opportunity, they're going to be like, we don't care about that. We want people to have health care. And you go to the conservatives and Trump supporters, are going to be like, bring our jobs back. I don't see any of the Bernie people being like, yay, war. Well, some of them, but not like the legit progressives. And the Trump supporters, definitely not. So if there's one thing that's going to drive a peaceful split is when both populist factions tell the establishment, we don't care about you anymore and we don't agree. And we don't like those people either, but we agree not to interact anymore. I think the real issue is we could have a weakening of the federal government. We don't need a peaceful split. We don't need a civil war or a revolution. We need the Supreme Court to stop being able to dictate laws for the entire country.
Right.
That's
States'
really
rights.
it. That's
Federalism, yeah.
Because I was reading a lot about the revolution and American independence. You know that a bunch of people in New York signed a Declaration of Dependence? They were like, we don't want revolution. We love the king. So like 500 and something people signed this. No one knows because, we won and they didn't. So, but anyway, the original Articles of Confederation in the U.S., extremely weak. It was basically like all the states with whatever authority they had said, we're going to fight for each other so that, we're all independent. And then after that, you kind of do your own thing. With the Constitution, they were all like, okay, now we're one country and we have to, we have these rules, we have a Supreme Court, we have legislation and stuff like that. It affects everybody. I guess that was a decent idea, but now what's happening is we can still provide for the common defense. We can still do what the federal government was supposed to do in collecting taxes and, providing military and, negotiations on behalf of all the states. But does it make sense that half the states completely disagree with half the states on certain key issues, and the Supreme Court says we hereby rule that everyone must abide a certain way? While I certainly agree with a lot of the rulings of the Supreme Court because they've benefited me and my family, like going back to the 60s and civil rights and stuff like that, the problem now is that the cultural issues are so stark and completely out of this world that, we're on the verge of people, we're literally watching people kill each other and beat each other in the street. If we just said, okay, West Virginia, you can have your guns and do your thing. Okay, and if people don't like it, you can move somewhere else. But it's weird. The left are the ones advocating for saying like all states must conform to one uniform law in this country, even though they don't live in these states.
Yeah, if California wants to give up their guns, I don't care. Just stay out of West Virginia.
Right, exactly.
Yeah. If someone wants to be this armed and live with a bunch of rats around them, they could go to New York City. Go right ahead. Feel free to support those incentives. And I think really you hit on a good point here. Decentralization, I think, is a peaceful way to resolve a lot of this. And I think if there ever was an opportunity to make people realize that independence, states' rights are very important. It is right now. I think we have a very big opportunity to remind everyone we don't need a huge, big, bloated, bureaucratic federal government centralizing and controlling everything. We see what happens with the DMV. It's not a good idea. Less government is good, and it allows people to prevail, it allows people to thrive, and it allows people to, of course, not be squashed and screwed over by all the big multinational corporations that are using government to their own personal benefit. And a lot of people have it skewed. They're saying the corporations are evil, we need more government. No, you fool, you don't understand that it's because of big government and their incentives and their programs and their one-on-one working with them that has established them to be these big giants that they are right now, and why we're living in this current situation that we are. It's because of direct government intervention.
You know, I've been talking for a while about the track towards a civil war, and seeing like half the states align against the other, in you know, almost making it to the Supreme Court, or it was docketed in the Supreme Court. Supreme Court rejected it. Just shows that there is serious alignment between the left, the Republicans, Democrats, left to right, against each other. You know, based on the stuff we were talking about with like a new Occupy Wall Street, I'm wondering if it's not going to be a civil war, but a revolution. And what I mean by that is it'll look more like what happened to Syria than like the civil war in this country. We have a political establishment. You have people like Joe Biden. He's filling the ranks. Like Joe Biden, you know what he did? The moment they said Joe Biden is the president-elect, he was like, all right, and he got a fire truck, and he hooked the hose right into a big old swamp and started spraying DC down, full blast, the fire hose.
You're a tandem.
Seriously.
He is filling the swamp with a fire hose. So, you know what I'm talking about? The left and their autonomous zones. Like you said, you don't care if California bans guns. Just stay away from West Virginia. Okay? So now you got this town in Washington. Why would they interfere with what Portland's doing? You voted for it. You go do your thing. So what happens then when the establishment tries to maintain control over all of them, and then you get something like, you know, right-wing individuals, right-wing militias saying to left-wing militias, hey, you don't like we saw with the Boogaloo Boys and Black Lives Matter and Antifa. There was this rally in the West Coast where the Boogaloo Boys were like shaking hands with Antifa. And they were like, look, we disagree with you, but we all agree the government's bad, right? And they're like, yeah. And there's a video, I think it's from Ford Fisher, where the Antifa guy is like, you stood with us today and we respect you for that. And so what happens? Those people will say, we don't want to go to your town or your state. We want our state. And the Boogaloo Boys and the right wing are going to be like, we completely agree. It's the establishment and the government, you know, the mainstream political establishment is bad. So in that sense, if it comes down to like these COVID lockdowns destroying people's lives, you're going to, and the Michigan police blocking the GOP from coming into the Capitol building, they shut it down. Then Republicans are eventually going to be like, why am I going to support these police? Then when Antifa and Black Lives Matter go and fight the cops and say defund the police, conservatives are going to be like, okay.
I'm already seeing it.
Yeah.
Like I've been covering this stuff a lot, and I think I had tweeted out like the Michigan video of them being denied entry. My mentions are all Republicans being like,
F the
why are we
police.
backing the blue?
Yep.
Let's stop backing the blue. I don't back the blue anymore. And it's getting to a point, but the problem is the reasons are very different. So I don't think there'll be an alliance necessarily.
No, but if the enemy of the enemy is my friend, and you know the cops are doing something bad, then the Republicans are going to be like, I'm not getting involved. Right. So I don't think the right, I shouldn't say Republicans, I keep saying that, the Trump supporters or the populist right, I don't think they're going to show up to Portland and be like, we've come to supply aid in your fight against the establishment. Maybe in some point. I think mostly they're going to sit back, put their feet up and be like, we ain't helping you. You're on your own, officer. Why don't you go lock down some poor working family's business so they go starve to death? I'm not going to support that. I personally will not support that. And so the more I see these cops like in Staten Island barring people from their First Amendment rights, I'm like, sorry, I'm not going to support those cops. By all means, Antifa, do your thing. I don't care. Defund them, whatever. I don't live there. If you voted for it, well, that's, you know, you live there. What do you want me to say about it?
But if it was invaded by like a foreign country, would you still come to their aid?
That's an interesting question, because at one point I probably would have said yes. At this point, man, I don't know. If New York destroys everything and their government destroys everything, maybe, you know, for the people, not the establishment government. Or maybe I might just be like, well, this is what happens when you lose support of the people and they no longer feel the government represents them. Someone could come in and invade, and I'm going to be like, it's not a government for me. They don't. I've never been a Republican. They never represented me. Joe Biden certainly doesn't. None of these people do. So why would I do anything? I'm not a part of that community.
Yeah. The bigger question is, who would want New York City? No one wants that hellhole. I live there. I moved away from there for a particular reason.
Luke
It's
would rather live in my parking lot.
Yes, I'm a lot happier here.
Were you there when it
my
flooded?
RV's bigger than my apartment was in New York City. I mean,
Yeah, New York's
Were
awful.
you there when it flooded during Sandy?
Yeah, I was there.
That was
Tim was there as
insane.
well.
I was there.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah, it was crazy.
You know, one thing the government I think is overreaching and overdoing that's a little bit too much is forcing us all to use the same currency. And if they would just back off and let us decentralize command here.
But you can. That's not true. I mean,
The U.S. dollar is the national currency.
So what?
And
Ithaca
it's
has
illegal
the-
to start a currency
No,
in
it's
the United
not.
States right now. Yeah,
that's not true. Ithaca has the Ithaca Hour.
They send them to
There's
us.
there's a bunch of jurisdictions with local currencies. There's a big movement.
Breckenridge dollars.
Well, that's
Yeah.
awesome.
And there's cryptocurrencies.
There is
What-
crypto,
what-
but they regulate the hell out of it, and I don't think they should.
The issue I think was there was one guy. Look, do you remember the guy who did the Liberty dollar? Do you remember that?
Yes.
He got raided, but I guess it was because he was printing money and calling it dollars and currency.
That's what I'm talking about.
But that's not the so when you look at places like Ithaca, they have it's not really big anymore. I went there, a year or two ago and asked them about it, and they said it still exists, but it kind of fell out of disuse because the main proponent eventually.
And they could have done it if they just didn't put dollars on there.
Thanks for checking out this clip from the Timcast IRL podcast. We do the show live Monday through Friday at 8 p.m. So come back to check us out when we go live. Don't forget to subscribe, hit the like button, hit the notification bell, and we are also available on all podcast platforms for free if you want to listen to us there. Thanks for hanging out, and we will see you all next time.